Pay close attention to what you are about to see. These images will be seen around the world. These rats have been fed with transgenic corn during their entire life cycle. The tumors they suffer from are enormous. The study that revealed the effect of the GMOs on the health of these rats has just been completed. We were able to witness the study in its entirety. It lasted for 2 years. Following years of doubt and controversies, will we finally know the truth about GMOs? Would we then be faced with a health crisis of global proportions?
This is the longest, most thorough study to have been carried out on a GMO, and we have also carried out a joint study on the most used pesticide in the world, the Roundup, which is a herbicide. It belongs to the main pesticide category. We spent over a year trying to obtain transgenic corn because no GMO manufacturers were willing to provide them. This is because Monsanto requires contracts to be signed stipulating that the seeds must not be used for testing and an arrangement must be made prior to the testing. We wanted our study to be independent.
Up until now, the corn NK603, the very one selected for the study, had only been tested over a 3-month period, and that in a test environment entirely controlled by Monsanto, its manufacturer. Furthermore, concerning the Roundup, also manufactured by Monsanto and which is used for growing corn, only its active agent, glyphosate, had been assessed. But one needs to understand that the manufacturers, in order to enable the active agent to penetrate the plant cell successfully, use additives that are sometimes more harmful than the actual glyphosate. It is crucial to test not only the GMO, but also the GMO with its residue and the pesticide on its own. Every rat out of the 200 that were tested was dissected by Professor Seralini's team. They did this to discover exactly what had affected their organs. The purpose behind this was to identify the way each diet, GMO and Roundup on its own, had acted on the metabolism of each animal, focusing on the development rate of the tumors that, and this comes as no surprise, only start to manifest themselves after the initial 3-month period.
What these figures show are the large tumors. Each step up represents a large tumor, which can measure 17 millimeters by 17 millimeters. For a rat, these measurements are colossal. It would equate to a tumor of this size if seen on a human being. It is enormous. After having studied these tumors, it can be said that 94% of them take effect in the mammary glands, which would equate to breast cancer in a woman. We are faced with renal tumors for the males, but not only, some males also suffer from mammary tumors.
Professor Seralini's study holds one last surprise for us, and this is a major one. Up until now, one could have thought that the main cause of death for the tested rats was coming from the pesticide added to the corn. But what the study highlighted, and this for the first time ever, is the fact that the transgenesis itself could have killed the rats. What this means is that just by interfering with the genome of the plant in order to modify it, we are faced with repercussions that no one could have anticipated. This is enough to make us reconsider all the scientific precepts that led to the creation of GMOs.
What can be said is that there is an increase in deaths due to GMOs and Roundups. The biggest surprise came when we realized that GMOs without any Roundup residue were responsible for an increase in the death rate of females and of some males. What is alarming, this is the GMO that is being eaten by the Americans, but also the GMO that has been approved for importation by European agencies, including the French ones, and that obviously contaminates our food.
Now, what do the livestock in the United States eat? They eat largely Roundup-ready crops. Roundup-ready soy, corn, cottonseed, canola mash, sugar beet pulp, and soon alfalfa. Now remember, Roundup pulls the nutrients out of the crop. So now we have millions of livestock eating nutrient-deficient food. And what do we eat? We eat plants and we eat animals and take their milk. So it turns out it's a perfect storm now, not just for plant disease, but for animal and human disease.
Transgenic animals are used for a variety of purposes. They're used in animal experiments and research.
See, his genes now are producing this fluorescent green protein.
And he's okay? This doesn't hurt him? He's a normal cat?
Completely normal.
This is our mouse with genetic hyperactivity disorder.
They're used in the production of various pharmaceuticals.
This piece of human chromosome contains the human antibody genes. When we put that into the cow will express the human antibody genes rather than cow antibody genes.
As well as in farm animal production, the production of meat, dairy, and eggs, or at least that's their hope.
On this week's special edition of NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman, genetic evaluation, DNA testing, and how it can mean more money for your operation.
They've taken agriculture and built an industrial model which doesn't fit nature. So instead of changing their agricultural model to accommodate what is natural, they're changing nature to accommodate the industrial model. They've put spider genes into goats in the hopes that they can milk the goat to get spiderweb protein to make bulletproof vests.
This is bizarre. It's certainly different. They're absolutely normal. I don't think there's anything different about them.
They've put cow genes into pigs and made cowhides on those pigs. They had what was called an enviropig, a pig that would have manure that was less toxic.
They can create these featherless chickens to kind of better live in these tight battery cages, these small barren wire enclosures extending down long rows and often windowless sheds. It can be 1 million birds in a single shed. How do you do that? Well, without them overheating, where you have this massive ventilation fans. But another way, you just take off their feathers.
Featherless chickens, they grow faster than a bird with feathers. They cost less because you don't have expensive housing. Good for the person, good for the bird.
Several species of genetically engineered fish stand ready to be marketed. There's genetically engineered tilapia in Cuba. There's the genetically engineered salmon in the United States and Canada.
Both these fish are 18 months old, but the larger genetically engineered Aqua Advantage salmon grows twice as fast as the regular salmon. Scientists found that adding genetic material from a Pacific salmon and an eel-like fish helps them grow round the clock.
It's called the Aqua Advantage salmon, and if the Food and Drug Administration approves it, it may soon be on your plate.
There's a genetically modified salmon that was created by Canadian researchers that was tested up in Canada. They put these frankenfish into tanks and they fed them sufficient food and there was no problem. When they reduced the amount of food, the frankenfish freaked. They started killing and eating their neighbors. So what happens if the FDA approves these frankenfish and let's say they escape into the ocean? I don't know what's worse, the extinction of natural salmon or the roving of these frankenfish going around and killing and attacking other species and changing the whole ecosystem balance.
Evidence from experiments of fish genetically engineered to express the salmon growth hormone have found that they both have a mating advantage because they're larger, but they have a survival disadvantage. And it's that combination that, should a male transgenic fish escape into the wild, cause the rapid collapse and extinction of both transgenic and wild fish in as little as 50 generations.
They want to genetically engineer out the mothering tendency of livestock so it doesn't feel pain or suffering when it's separated from its offspring. Some people think that GMO really means God move over. In the case of genetically modifying animals to change their behavior and change their look and completely put them into this industrial model so that they can be harvested more efficiently, it is really eliminating the billions of years of evolution and its wisdom and creating what the multinational companies think would give them more money. It's a kind of arrogance or lack of reverence of the natural processes that's unprecedented on Earth.